Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic I think is probably on pretty much everyone's mind at some point or another: living a longer and healthier life.
It's a pretty universal desire, isn't it?
I think so. And you've shared this really incredible collection of sources on the science of longevity. And what we're going to try to do today is really extract the useful stuff, the practical insights that can help us not just add years to our lives, but actually thrive in those years and kind of push back against that age-related decline. Think of it as building our own strategy for a really vibrant future.
I like that, a blueprint for longevity, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's really fascinating is that all these sources we're diving into kind of collectively pose this really profound question.
Mhm.
How can we use what we now know about the biology of aging, the actual science of it, to optimize our longevity and well-being? And I think one of the most striking takeaways from all this material is that aging isn't simply a passive process of decline. It's far more dynamic than that.
That's interesting. So it's not just about accepting that things are going to inevitably go downhill.
Not at all. There's a real potential for agency here.
So we're going to get into some really interesting themes here. We'll be looking at how our lifestyle choices, like what we eat and how we move, can actually influence our genes.
Epigenetics. Right.
Exactly. Epigenetics is a key part of this. We're also going to dive into the role of hormones and how they change as we age, and then really get into the nitty-gritty of how things like our diet, exercise, even mindfulness can really move the needle when it comes to longevity.
It's a holistic picture, and the science is revealing how interconnected these elements truly are.
Now, I know that a lot of people think that living to 100 with a sharp mind and feeling truly vibrant is just kind of a fantasy. But is that actually becoming a real possibility?
The research increasingly suggests that it might be. We're seeing a convergence of scientific breakthroughs, and we have the real-world examples of those living in the blue zones, demonstrating exceptional longevity.
And speaking of the blue zones, we're definitely going to be getting into what makes them so unique. But first, I think it's really important to clarify a distinction that kept coming up in these sources: health span versus lifespan. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. Lifespan is simply the total number of years we live. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But health span is the portion of those years where we actually enjoy good health. We're strong, our minds are sharp, and we maintain our independence. So the real goal isn't just living longer, but living healthier for longer.
That's a really important distinction. So it's not just about quantity of years, it's about the quality of those years.
Exactly.
Now, to really understand how to achieve this longer health span, I think we need to start with the basics. Let's delve into the biology of aging. What's actually happening in our bodies as we get older?
You know, it's fascinating how our understanding of aging has evolved. For centuries, it was this abstract concept, more philosophical than scientific. But now we're really beginning to unravel the biological complexity of aging at the molecular and cellular level.
So we're moving from speculation to actual empirical evidence.
Exactly. We're no longer talking about fountains of youth. We're talking about specific cellular processes and the factors that influence them.
Right, and the sources kept mentioning these hallmarks of aging. What are those exactly, and how do they contribute to this age-related decline?
Yeah, the hallmarks of aging are kind of like the key biological processes that tend to go awry as we get older. And these are really considered the fundamental drivers of age-related changes.
So like the underlying mechanisms.
Right. And there are several of them that are really important. One that comes up a lot is oxidative stress.
Okay, oxidative stress. I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I completely understand it. What's the basic idea there?
So it's essentially an imbalance within our cells.
Hmm.
Our cells naturally produce these molecules called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, as a byproduct of our metabolism. It's just part of how our cells create energy.
So it's kind of like exhaust fumes from our cellular engines.
That's a great analogy. And normally, our bodies have these really powerful antioxidant systems that neutralize these ROS, like a built-in pollution control system.
Okay, so what goes wrong?
Well, as we age, this delicate balance starts to shift. We tend to produce more of these ROS, more cellular exhaust, and our antioxidant defenses become less effective. And this can lead to damage to our DNA, to our cell membranes, even to the proteins that make up our cells. It's almost like a cellular rusting process.
Cellular rust. That's a great way to visualize it. And what are the consequences of this cellular rusting?
It can lead to a whole cascade of problems. It can cause cells to age prematurely and become dysfunctional. It can even contribute to cell death. And this accumulation of damage is linked to a whole range of age-related diseases.
So it's not just about our cells getting a bit creaky, it's about them losing their ability to function properly and even potentially turning against us.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay. What's another one of these hallmarks of aging?
Another big one is telomere attrition.
Telomeres. Those are the protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes, right?
Exactly. You can think of them like the plastic tips on your shoelaces.
Yeah.
They protect the ends of the chromosomes from fraying or sticking together.
Okay, so what happens to them as we age?
Well, every time a cell divides, its telomeres get a little bit shorter. It's just part of the process. And eventually, they get so short that the cell can't divide properly anymore. It either enters this state called senescence, where it's basically alive but not functioning properly, kind of like those zombie cells we talked about, or it undergoes programmed cell death.
So it's like a built-in limit on how many times a cell can replicate.
Right. And this telomere shortening is thought to be a major contributor to the aging process. It limits the body's ability to regenerate and repair tissues.
Okay, so we've got cellular rust from oxidative stress and these shortening telomeres that act as a kind of biological clock, limiting cellular division. What's next on the list of aging hallmarks?
Let's talk about our mitochondria. You know how they're often called the powerhouses of the cell?
Right, they generate energy.
Exactly. And as we age, our mitochondria don't function as efficiently as they used to. They produce less energy, and they actually generate more of those damaging ROS.
So our cellular power plants are not only becoming less productive, but they're also polluting more.
In a way, yes. And this mitochondrial dysfunction is linked to a whole bunch of problems like muscle loss, problems with our metabolism, and even neurodegenerative diseases.
Wow, so these little powerhouses play a much bigger role than I think most people realize.
They really do. They're essential for the health and vitality of just about every cell in our bodies.
Okay, so we've got oxidative stress, telomere shortening, mitochondrial dysfunction. What else is contributing to this aging process?
Well, remember those zombie cells we mentioned earlier? That process is called cellular senescence, and it's another major hallmark of aging.
Right, senescent cells, they're alive but not really thriving.
Exactly. And the problem is that these senescent cells don't just sit there quietly. They actually secrete a whole bunch of harmful substances that can damage neighboring cells and tissues. It's like they're spreading inflammation throughout the body.
So they're kind of like bad neighbors, causing trouble for everyone around them.
That's a good way to think about it. And this process is thought to contribute to a wide range of age-related diseases.
Okay, so these zombie cells are a big problem. Is there anything we can do about them?
There's a lot of research happening right now on a class of drugs called senolytics. These are compounds that can selectively eliminate senescent cells.
So like a targeted strike force against those cellular zombies.
Exactly. And the early results are really promising. In animal studies, senolytics have been shown to improve a variety of age-related conditions.
That's really fascinating. It sounds like something out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it? But it's becoming a reality.
Okay, so we've been talking about what's happening inside individual cells, but what about the bigger picture?
Well, all of these hallmarks of aging contribute to what's called inflammaging.
It's inflammaging.
It's basically a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation that develops as we age. It's different from the acute inflammation you get after an injury, which is a normal part of healing. Inflammaging is this persistent, simmering inflammation throughout the body. And it's a major driver of many age-related diseases.
So it's like a slow burn that's constantly damaging our tissues and organs.
Exactly. It's a key process we need to address if we want to promote longevity.
Now, the sources also talked about the evolutionary reasons why we age. Is there a reason why our bodies are seemingly programmed to decline?
That's a big question, and evolutionary biologists have a couple of theories. One is called the disposable soma theory. It suggests that our bodies prioritize reproduction over longevity. So once we've passed our reproductive prime, evolution isn't as concerned with keeping us around.
So it's kind of like our bodies are designed to get us to reproductive age, and then, well, we're on our own.
In a way, yes. And there's another theory called antagonistic pleiotropy. This suggests that some genes that might be beneficial early in life can actually have harmful effects later on.
So a gene that helps us grow strong when we're young might actually contribute to aging later on.
Exactly. And this is thought to be because evolution is primarily focused on survival and reproduction in our early years. What happens later on is less of a priority from an evolutionary perspective.
Wow, that's pretty sobering. So it sounds like we're up against some pretty fundamental biological forces when it comes to aging.
That's true. But what's really exciting is that science is beginning to identify ways to potentially override some of these evolutionary constraints. And that's where the concept of interventions comes in.
Right. The sources highlighted several interventions that can actually modulate our aging trajectory.
Precisely. And these aren't just theoretical ideas, they're based on solid scientific evidence. For example, there's dietary restriction.
So eating less can help us live longer.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that reducing our calorie intake without causing malnutrition can have a really beneficial impact on longevity.
And how does that work?
It seems to trigger a cascade of positive effects at the cellular level. It can reduce oxidative stress, enhance those cellular repair processes like autophagy, improve insulin sensitivity, and activate some of those key longevity pathways we talked about earlier.
So it's not just about consuming fewer calories. It's about the metabolic changes that occur when we strategically reduce our food intake.
Exactly. And then there's exercise, which has a ton of benefits for longevity. It improves mitochondrial function, helps maintain muscle mass, promotes the growth of new brain cells. The list goes on and on.
Right. Exercise seems like a no-brainer when it comes to health in general. But what's really interesting is that it also seems to directly impact those cellular processes involved in aging.
It does. And then there's stress modulation. We talked about the harmful effects of chronic stress on aging, and practices like mindfulness and meditation, along with getting enough quality sleep, can really help to mitigate those effects.
So calming our minds and getting enough rest are key components of a longevity strategy.
Absolutely. And then finally, there's the field of pharmacological geroprotectors. These are drugs and compounds that are being developed to specifically target the aging process at the cellular level.
So we might be able to actually take a pill to slow down aging.
That's the hope. And there are some really promising candidates in development.
This is all incredibly exciting, and it really reinforces the idea that we have more control over how we age than we might realize. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and delve into the role of our genes in all of this. How much of longevity is actually predetermined by our DNA?
That's the classic nature versus nurture debate, isn't it? And like with most things, it's not a simple either-or answer. Aging is a complex interplay between our genes and the environment.
So, are there specific genes that can influence how long we live?
Yes, there are. Scientists have identified a number of genes that seem to be associated with longevity and healthier aging. Some of these genes are involved in DNA repair, others in regulating metabolism, and still others in protecting cells from damage.
So, if you inherit the right combination of genes, you're basically set up for a longer life.
It's not quite that simple, but genetics definitely plays a role. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Our genes don't operate in isolation. They're constantly interacting with our environment and our lifestyle choices.
Right. We've talked about epigenetics before.
Exactly. Epigenetics is the study of how our environment and our behavior can actually modify the expression of our genes without changing the underlying DNA sequence.
So it's kind of like our genes provide a basic blueprint, but epigenetics determines how that blueprint is interpreted and executed.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that we're learning more and more about how lifestyle factors like diet and exercise can actually influence these epigenetic modifications.
So what we eat and how we move can actually turn certain genes on or off.
In a way, yes. For example, studies have shown that things like caloric restriction can activate genes involved in cellular repair and protection. Certain compounds found in plants, like those in berries or green tea, can also influence gene expression. And exercise has been shown to have a whole range of beneficial epigenetic effects.
So it's not just about the nutrients we're getting from food, but also how those nutrients are interacting with our genes at a very fundamental level.
That's the emerging picture.
And I imagine stress and sleep also play a role in this epigenetic landscape.
Absolutely. Chronic stress can have negative epigenetic effects, and getting enough quality sleep is essential for maintaining healthy epigenetic patterns.
So it's really this intricate interplay between our genes, our environment, and our lifestyle choices that ultimately shapes how we age.
And that's why understanding our individual genetic predispositions can be so valuable. The sources talked about the growing field of personalized longevity, and one of the tools that's becoming increasingly available is genetic testing.
Right, you can send off a saliva sample and get a report about your genes. But what kind of insights can we actually gain from these tests? And how can that information be used to promote longevity?
Well, genetic testing can reveal a lot about our individual predispositions to certain age-related diseases. For example, there are genes that can influence your risk for heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, certain types of cancer, and more. Knowing this information can help you be more proactive and make targeted lifestyle changes to potentially mitigate those risks.
So it's kind of like getting a glimpse into your potential health future and then taking steps to optimize it.
Exactly. And beyond disease risk, genetic testing can also provide insights into how your body responds to different types of exercise and nutrition. It can even shed light on your metabolic pathways and detoxification processes, which can be really helpful for personalizing your diet and supplement regimen.
So it's about moving from a one-size-fits-all approach to a more individualized strategy for healthy aging.
That's the idea behind personalized longevity. But it's important to remember that genetic testing is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not a crystal ball. Your genes provide a framework, but your lifestyle choices ultimately determine how that framework is expressed.
Right, so it's not about being a slave to our genes, but rather using that information to empower us to make informed decisions.
Okay, let's zoom in even further and talk about cellular health and regeneration.
We've already touched on some of this when we discussed the hallmarks of aging, but it's worth really emphasizing that a lot of the aging process comes down to what's happening at the cellular level.
Right, those tiny building blocks that make up our entire bodies.
Exactly. And one of the key things that happens as we age is that our cells accumulate damage from oxidative stress, from environmental toxins, from the natural wear and tear of life. And over time, this damage can lead to cellular dysfunction and ultimately to cell death.
So it's kind of like our cells are slowly breaking down over time.
In a way, yes. But thankfully, our bodies also have incredible repair mechanisms that can help to counteract some of this damage. And I imagine some of those interventions we discussed, like caloric restriction and exercise, can help to boost those repair mechanisms.
Exactly. But as we get older, these repair processes tend to become less efficient. And that's where understanding the specific mechanisms of cellular aging can really help us develop more targeted interventions.
Okay, so let's revisit those telomeres for a moment. We talked about how they shorten every time a cell divides, and the sources kept referring to this as the molecular clock of aging. Can you explain what that means?
Imagine a clock that's slowly ticking down. Every time a cell divides, it's like that clock ticks forward a little bit. And once the clock runs out, that cell is no longer able to divide and replicate.
So our cells have a limited number of replications built in, and the telomeres are like a timer that tracks those replications.
Exactly. And this progressive shortening of telomeres is thought to be one of the key factors that determines our lifespan. It's why we can't live forever.
So telomere length is really important, but what determines how fast they shorten?
A lot of factors can influence telomere length, including genetics, lifestyle, and environmental exposures. For example, chronic stress has been shown to accelerate telomere shortening.
So stress is literally making our cells age faster.
It can, yes, but there's also evidence that things like a healthy diet, regular exercise, and stress reduction techniques can help to slow down telomere shortening or even potentially lengthen them.
So we do have some control over this molecular clock.
It seems that way. And then there's telomerase, which we touched on briefly earlier.
Right, the enzyme that can rebuild telomeres.
Exactly. Telomerase is kind of like a cellular fountain of youth. It can add those protective caps back onto the ends of our chromosomes, effectively rewinding that molecular clock.
That sounds amazing. So why don't we just boost telomerase activity and live forever?
Well, there are some challenges with that. For one, telomerase is also highly active in cancer cells, which is one of the reasons why cancer cells can divide uncontrollably. So we need to be cautious about simply boosting telomerase activity across the board.
Right, there could be unintended consequences.
Exactly. But there's a lot of research being done on how we might be able to safely harness the power of telomerase to promote healthy aging without increasing cancer risk.
That makes sense. Okay, let's talk more about those mitochondria, those energy-producing powerhouses in our cells. We know their function declines with age, but how does that actually contribute to the aging process?
Well, mitochondria are involved in so many critical processes within the cell. They generate the energy that powers our cells. They're involved in signaling pathways. They help regulate cell death. So when their function starts to decline, it has ripple effects throughout the entire cell.
So it's like a domino effect.
Exactly. And one of the major consequences of mitochondrial dysfunction is that it increases oxidative stress.
Right, those harmful ROS molecules we talked about earlier.
Exactly. As mitochondria age, they become less efficient at using oxygen, and this leads to the production of more ROS, which can damage cellular components and contribute to aging.
So our cells are not only producing less energy, but they're also becoming more toxic.
That's one way to put it. And this mitochondrial decline is thought to be a major contributor to a whole range of age-related diseases, from heart disease to Alzheimer's disease to cancer.
Okay, so maintaining healthy mitochondria is really crucial for longevity. But as you mentioned, they tend to decline with age. Is there anything we can do to support mitochondrial health?
There are a number of things that can help. Exercise is really important. It actually stimulates the production of new mitochondria. Certain nutrients like CoQ10 and PQQ also play a role in mitochondrial function. And there's emerging research on ways to actually improve the efficiency of our existing mitochondria.
So it's not just about slowing down the decline, but also potentially boosting their function.
That's the goal.
Mhm.
And then there's mitophagy, which is another important process for maintaining mitochondrial health.
Mitophagy, is that related to autophagy?
Yes, it is. Mitophagy is a specialized form of autophagy that specifically targets damaged mitochondria for removal.
So it's like a cellular recycling program that gets rid of the old, worn-out mitochondria.
Exactly. And this process is really important for preventing the buildup of dysfunctional mitochondria, which can contribute to aging and disease.
So how can we promote mitophagy?
Some of those same lifestyle interventions that are beneficial for longevity, like caloric restriction and exercise, can also stimulate mitophagy. And there's some really interesting research being done on compounds that can enhance this process.
So it's all connected. What we eat, how we move, the stress we experience it all influences the health of our cells, which ultimately determines how we age.
That's one of the key takeaways from all of this research.
Okay, we've talked a lot about what's happening inside individual cells, but I know there's also a lot of interest in those senescent zombie cells we mentioned earlier. Can you tell us a bit more about their role in the aging process and what we might be able to do about them?
Certainly. As we've mentioned, senescent cells are essentially cells that have stopped dividing but haven't died. They're kind of in this state of limbo, and they can actually accumulate in our tissues as we age.
And why is that a problem?
Well, these senescent cells aren't just sitting there harmlessly. They secrete a whole cocktail of inflammatory molecules and enzymes that can damage surrounding tissues and contribute to aging.
So they're like little factories turning out harmful substances.
That's a good way to think about it. And this process is thought to be a major driver of chronic inflammation, which, as we've discussed, is a hallmark of aging and a contributor to many age-related diseases.
Okay, so these zombie cells are a big problem, but thankfully there's some really exciting research happening on ways to potentially eliminate them.
Precisely. We touched on senolytics earlier. These are a class of drugs that can selectively target and destroy senescent cells.
So they're kind of like cellular assassins going in and taking out those zombie cells.
That's a good way to put it. And the early research on senolytics is really promising. They've shown a lot of potential in animal studies for improving a variety of age-related conditions.
That's incredible. It's like science is catching up to science fiction.
It really is. And there's also growing interest in natural compounds that might have senolytic properties.
So we might be able to get some of these benefits through diet and lifestyle as well.
It's definitely an area worth exploring. And then there's autophagy, which is another key process for maintaining cellular health and promoting longevity.
Autophagy. That's the cellular cleanup and recycling process we talked about earlier, right?
Exactly. It's essentially how our cells get rid of damaged components and recycle the building blocks. It's like a cellular spring cleaning.
And why is this important for aging?
Well, as we age, this autophagy process tends to become less efficient. This means that damaged components can start to accumulate in our cells, leading to dysfunction and potentially contributing to age-related diseases.
So it's like our cells are getting cluttered with junk.
Exactly. And this is where lifestyle interventions can really make a difference.
Like caloric restriction and exercise.
Those are two big ones. Caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, and regular exercise have all been shown to stimulate autophagy. And there are also certain compounds that can enhance this process, like resveratrol, which is found in red wine.
So there are things we can do to help our cells clean up their act and stay younger for longer.
Absolutely. It's about giving our cells the support they need to function optimally.
This has been a really fascinating look at the cellular underpinnings of aging, and it really reinforces the idea that aging is a dynamic process that we can influence through our lifestyle choices. Okay, let's now shift our attention to one of the most powerful tools we have for promoting longevity, our diet.
Absolutely. And what's really insightful is to look at those populations around the world known for their exceptional longevity.
The blue zones, right?
Exactly. Places like Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, Nicoya, Loma Linda, they all have remarkably high percentages of centenarians, people living to 100 or older. And while there are certainly genetic factors at play, their lifestyles, and particularly their diets, are thought to be major contributors to their longevity.
So what are they eating that's keeping them so healthy and vibrant into their later years?
Well, there are some common threads across these blue zones. Their diets are typically plant-based, rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. They minimize processed foods, especially those loaded with sugar, unhealthy fats, and artificial ingredients. And they tend to eat smaller portions, often stopping before they feel completely full.
So it sounds like a pretty common sense approach. Lots of plants, minimal junk food, and paying attention to portion sizes.
Exactly. It's not about following a restrictive diet. It's about incorporating whole, nutritious foods and making mindful choices.
Now, I know that the sources also discuss the specific mechanisms of caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, and time-restricted eating. We touched on these earlier, but can you explain a bit more about how these strategies might be beneficial for longevity?
Certainly. Caloric restriction, as we discussed, involves consistently consuming fewer calories without becoming malnourished. This can trigger a number of beneficial metabolic changes, like reducing oxidative stress, enhancing autophagy, and activating longevity pathways.
So it's about strategically reducing our calorie intake. What about intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating? How do they work?
These approaches focus on when you eat rather than what you eat. With intermittent fasting, you cycle between periods of eating and fasting. For example, you might fast for 16 hours each day and eat all your meals within an 8-hour window.
So it's kind of like giving your digestive system a break.
Exactly. And this can have a number of positive effects, like improving insulin sensitivity, reducing inflammation, and even boosting cognitive function. Time-restricted eating is similar, but you typically have a longer eating window. It's about synchronizing your eating patterns with your natural circadian rhythms.
So both approaches involve strategic periods of fasting, but there is some flexibility in how you implement them.
Right, and the research on both intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating is really promising for longevity.
Okay, so the timing of our meals matters. But what about the specific foods we're eating? The sources highlighted a number of bioactive compounds and nutrients that seem to be particularly beneficial for longevity.
Yes, certain foods contain compounds that can have a direct impact on those aging pathways we've been discussing.
Like what?
Well, polyphenols are a big one. They're powerful antioxidants found in plant foods like berries, green tea, dark chocolate, and even red wine. They help to protect cells from damage and reduce inflammation.
So those colorful fruits and vegetables aren't just good for us, they're actively fighting the aging process.
Exactly. And then there are omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for brain health and also have potent anti-inflammatory effects. They're found in fatty fish like salmon, as well as in plant sources like flax seeds and walnuts.
Okay, so those are two big ones to focus on. What else?
Resveratrol is another compound that's gotten a lot of attention for its potential longevity benefits. It's found in red grapes, red wine, and some berries. It seems to activate those sirtuin genes we discussed earlier.
So a glass of red wine might actually be good for you.
In moderation, possibly. But don't rely on red wine as your sole source of resveratrol. It's also important to get it from other sources, like grapes and berries.
Makes sense. What about those cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower? I know they're considered really healthy.
They are. Cruciferous vegetables contain compounds like sulforaphane, which can boost the body's detoxification processes and protect against DNA damage.
So they're like little internal cleaning crews.
That's a great way to put it. And then there's the importance of fermented foods and probiotics. They help to support a healthy gut microbiome, which is increasingly being recognized as a key factor in overall health and longevity.
Right, the gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria that live in our digestive tract, they play a much bigger role in our health than we used to think.
They really do. And fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi can help to promote a diverse and balanced gut microbiome, which can have positive effects throughout the body.
So it's not just about what we eat, it's also about nurturing the ecosystem within our gut.
Exactly. And then there's the ongoing debate about whether plant-based diets are superior to omnivorous diets for longevity.
Right, some people swear by a vegan or vegetarian diet, while others believe that meat is an important part of a healthy diet.
It's a complex issue. Both approaches have potential benefits and drawbacks. Plant-based diets tend to be lower in saturated fat and cholesterol and higher in fiber and antioxidants. They're also associated with a lower risk of many chronic diseases.
So there's definitely a strong argument for reducing or eliminating animal products.
There is. But it's important to plan carefully if you're following a plant-based diet to ensure you're getting all the nutrients you need, especially things like vitamin B12, iron, and omega-3 fatty acids.
Right, you can't just eat fries and call it a vegan diet.
Exactly. And then there's the Mediterranean diet, which is often cited as a model for healthy aging.
The Mediterranean diet is always getting accolades for its health benefits. What makes it so special?
It incorporates many of those principles we've been discussing. It's rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats, like olive oil. It includes moderate amounts of fish, poultry, and dairy. And it emphasizes the social and cultural aspects of eating meals together, which can also have positive impacts on health and well-being.
So it's not just a set of dietary rules, but a way of life.
Exactly. And the Mediterranean diet has been linked to a lower risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and some types of cancer.
So there's a lot of evidence to support it. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on diet. What about the role of exercise in longevity?
Exercise is absolutely essential for healthy aging. It's beneficial for just about every system in the body, and it has a direct impact on many of those aging pathways we've been discussing.
So it's not just about looking good or maintaining a healthy weight, it's about actually slowing down the aging process.
Exactly. And the best approach for longevity involves incorporating a variety of different types of exercise.
So it's not just about hitting the treadmill every day.
No, it's about finding a balance between different types of activity. Strength training is really important for maintaining muscle mass and bone density as we age. High-intensity interval training, or HIE, can boost cardiovascular fitness and stimulate mitochondrial function. And regular aerobic exercise, like brisk walking or cycling, is great for overall health and can even promote the growth of new brain cells.
Wow, so there are a lot of different options.
There are. And what's important is to find activities that you enjoy and that you can stick with consistently.
Right, consistency is key. But what about those people who hate going to the gym or just don't have a lot of time for structured exercise?
That's where those incidental movements we talked about earlier come in neat, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Right, things like walking around, taking the stairs, doing chores.
Exactly. All of those little movements throughout the day can add up and have a significant impact.